You are now listening to the 3MC podcast, a college experience.
Welcome to the 3MC podcast. We are a group of college students that have a project where we decided that we wanted to reach out to the Weber State community and help everyone find community through open communication. We thought that a podcast would be the best way to inform other students about campus resources and other aids. I'm Matthew Lerdahl, and I am a junior here at Weber State.
I'm Claudia McClellan, and I am a senior at Weber State.
I'm Morley Hayes, and I'm a senior at Weber State as well.
I'm Megan Hancock, and I am a junior at Weber State.
We are very excited to bring this podcast to you guys and help find some answers that maybe you've been struggling with. We've conducted a focus group with several other students to find what some of the most common struggles are that they've experienced. Today, we have Weber State's very own Professor Ault. He is an org comm professor, and he specializes in student counseling as well, so he'll be a wealth of knowledge for us today.
Thank you for being with us, Dr. Ault.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to have you guys all do one more quick test.
Can you make mine louder? I want to be louder than everybody else.
Yours is actually really crisp right now.
Hello, hello, hello.
Testing.
Okay.
Hello.
We're out here in the
Yeah.
podcast studio.
All right, we're live.
Sounds good. We ready?
Yep.
Okay. Good morning. We are 3MC, and today we're talking about finding community in open communication. I am Matthew. We're here with Megan, Morley, Claudia, and our professor, Dr. Ault. Today we have a surprise guest, Dr. Ault, Weber State's own, and he is a professor here in the org comm department, and he is also a student advisor. We conducted a focus group to ask a lot of different students from different starting points, freshman to senior, about their experiences here at Weber State and different things that they've struggled with and things that they wish they had more help with. Professor Ault is here to answer some questions and provide some advice and insight on how some of these students can find success and help. So many of the responses we received in our focus group were related to student support and confusion regarding getting into college. And one thing that I wanted to start off asking you is, would you say that you find most students utilize campus resources by the time they come to you, or is it kind of like they come to you and they don't know what's going on at all?
I think it's a mixed bag. I recently did some research with a former student that looked at this exact thing. A lot of students that come to college, if they've had some experience with people before that could teach them the ropes of higher education, then they're really good at navigating all of the different resources and the things that they can do. A lot of times first generation college students or especially college students of color really struggle because they don't have somebody that's walking them through the process. You know, if their parents didn't go to college, they don't really know that, oh, I have to fill out the FAFSA and I have to do an ACT test, or I have to register for classes in this way. And so they have to kind of figure all of that out while they're also trying to keep up on their classes and, you know, all of the other things, the social aspect of coming to college. So it can be really overwhelming for students if they don't have somebody kind of walking them through the process. And what I've found is that first generation college students in particular really struggle with that because they don't have those conversations as they're growing up. Like when my dad has a PhD and my mom has a master's degree. And so ever since I can remember, the conversations were about like, well, where are you going to go to college? When are you going to do the ACT? Not like, oh, do you want to go to college? Or, you know, some people, there's no expectation or discussion about college at all. You know, there's an expectation that they'll just go straight into work right after high school. And so when you're trying to figure that all out on your own, it can be really overwhelming and difficult.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like my experience resounds in that in some ways. The difference being my parents both went to college, but I didn't have a lot of direction coming into it where I just started haphazardly signing up for classes. I'm like, well, I know I need to take English. I'll just click on that one, you know? And then by the time I'm finding a career path or direction I want to take, it's like, well, I've taken a lot of classes that don't really help me. So when you get a student like that, where is kind of the first place you're going to point them to find some direction?
Well, what I try to do, yeah, I see this all the time. Students that come in with like, I have, 130 credits and I still have 2 years before I can graduate. And my first step is like, let's try and find like how we can utilize the classes that you've already taken to get you further along the path. Because, you know, if we want to be stickler and be like, yep, screw you, you took a lot of classes that you didn't need, but you still have to take everything exactly the way that it's prescribed. I find that it does more harm than good. It discourages students. They don't feel like their path is really working out, and they're more likely to like, I can go lay concrete and make a lot more money right now, and I don't really want to stay here and do this for 2 years. So my first step is like, you took this off the wall class that you didn't need. Is there a way that we can fit that in somewhere to make it so that you don't have to start from scratch? And then it's about charting the path that they want to get to. So my first question when I'm meeting with students is like, where do you want to be at the end of this? Like, what kind of jobs are you interested in doing? How do you see this path fitting into your life goals? And a lot of people, surprisingly more people than I would expect, really have no idea. They're like, well, I was just told that I need to go to college and so I need to graduate, but I have no plan or thought about what will happen after I graduate. And they wait until like the semester that they're graduating to even start looking around at like what options are available to them. So a lot of the conversations that I have with students are about like, how do we figure out where you want to be in a year when you graduate, or 2 years, or maybe like a few weeks when they graduate? And then how do we chart a path that's going to be most helpful for them to get where they want to go?
Absolutely. I love that because in one of the podcasts we listened to for, I think it was this class, one of the presenters talked about finding a sponsor. And I feel like a lot of students don't have that sponsor, whether it's through parents or family members, but a counselor such as yourself can be a sponsor like right away. And not only a sponsor, but an expert in this field. So it can help you visualize where you want to go, options you have. And if you've taken a lot of credits, maybe that's not a lost cause. One of the things that a lot of these students talked about was trying to find a balance when they've got to work a job, come to school, and try to make sure that they're not doing poorly in all of those fields. Because we invest so much in our educations, we care a lot about our classes, but when the rubber meets the road, there's time constraints to life and energy. So what's something that you would give advice when a student comes and says, hey, I'm feeling pretty burnout, I'm financially tight, and I feel like I'm coming up short in a few areas?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think all of us struggle with this, but
Yeah.
particularly when you're going to college, you have kids, you have a full-time job, there's a lot of responsibility and pressure on our students. And at Weber State in particular, we have so many non-traditional students. And there's maybe one or two students in my classes that don't have a job. And I think probably my number one recommendation seems counterintuitive, but it's don't give up on things that help you regulate your mental health. So, there's a lot of research out there that shows that exercise regularly 2 or 3 times a week for half an hour can help your mental state, and being outside in nature and getting enough sleep. all of those things are usually the first things to go.
Yep.
But the truth is that those are some of the most important things that you can do to help regulate things. And so I know that all of us know that we should exercise and we should get enough sleep and we should eat right and all of these things. But, if we don't prioritize them, then we're going to just find that like, oh, I don't have time to exercise, and so I won't. And then I'll feel more time crunched. I'll feel more depressed. I'll feel more anxiety. And I don't have the outlet to do that, to get rid of all of that anxiety. And so I think even when you're time crunched and you have a lot of responsibilities, prioritizing the things that are going to help you regulate yourself, those are really important. And just finding, in addition to those, finding ways to regulate your time. All of us have the same exact number of hours every day. And if you don't keep track of it, it's very easy to lose those hours in things that aren't really moving you forward. Not that you have to be productive all the time, but scrolling through social media or playing video games can be an escape, but very often you're like, well, I have 20 minutes. I'll just, play a game really quick, or I'll check Facebook. And then, an hour later, you're still scrolling through and watching videos and stuff. And I'm surprised constantly how much of my time just kind of trickles away without me paying attention to it. So when I feel time crunched, it's maybe not so much that I literally don't have enough time to get everything done. It's that I'm not really mindful of where my time goes.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's really good. I think a lot of it is that we do have the time, like you're saying, but making sure that it's used very efficiently and that we're getting the best bang for our buck when we spend our time on certain things. So, like you said, keeping your passion projects, keeping your exercise, keep all of those things, because when you cut them out, it's going to get filled in with something like you said, where you're scrolling and that time isn't going to be used efficiently.
Yeah, can I pipe in here? I have a personal experience with this too. Like before I started coming into these big college classes and doing what I'm doing now as a senior, I was so burnt out and I didn't know what to do. And like you said, me just changing some of those things in my life have helped me realize that I can do this and I can still have my own life, school, and still have like those different resources to go back to. So again, it's so important to have those things and to make sure you still are balancing your life in a good way.
Yeah, there's a lot of research about burnout, and I mean this is part of what I nerd out on. But it's interesting how counterintuitive it is. Like when you're experiencing burnout, a lot of times the remedy for that is to get involved in something new.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put a lot of additional effort into learning something else or engaging in mentoring or do something that takes more of my time. But the truth is that when you do those kinds of things, it tends to make you more energized. You find more purpose in what you're doing. It's more of a challenge for you to overcome. And so it becomes more of like a puzzle or a challenge, something that you can work on that is occupying your mind in a way that's different than just the grind of going through it. And so it kind of paradoxically solves burnout by adding something to your life rather than trying to just constantly cut things out.
For sure. And today, for example, like I got up at 4:30 and went to work out, and like I really was driving here. I just was so happy. Like today it was so amazing to like watch the sun come up, and like I feel like I can just kick this day in the butt now. So just having those little things like will really ultimately change your perspective of how you perceive things. So
Oh, definitely.
It's hard though, because when you're in that state, if you're experiencing depression or burnout, like the last thing you want to do is wake up early and go to the gym.
for sure, for
And
sure.
so it's finding ways, maybe there's research by a psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, Katie Milkman. She calls it temptation bundling, where you only do something that you really, really want to do, like watching a trashy TV show that is like your guilty pleasure, but
Yeah.
you can only do that when you're on the treadmill.
Yeah.
Or, you can only listen to that novel that you're really into when you're jogging, or, so
Mhm.
you're putting something that you really want to do with something that you should do.
For sure.
And it gives that added motivation to get you to do it, because all of us have had that experience where it's like, I'm going to set my alarm for 6 o'clock in the morning for tomorrow. And then, at night, you're really excited about it. And then it comes in the morning and you're like, I'm not going to do
Yeah,
that.
my
Screw
sleep's more
that.
important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this kind of goes into a lot of what we've already talked about, but a lot of these students find themselves feeling really stressed or a little bit of burnout, especially coming towards the end of the semester. So, what is something that you have found to be a really valuable skill, not only academically, but going into a career that someone should look to develop through their experience in college? Whether that's, well, we're biased in this department with communication. That helps a lot. Being an advocate for yourself, looking for people, talking about problems you have and finding solutions. But what's something you found is a valuable skill for students to learn?
I think, well, there's a lot of research about like what makes people happy. And, very often when you're finishing your college career, you're focused on like, I want to make money. I'm sick of being poor. I'm sick of eating ramen. I'm sick of not being able to go on trips that I want to go on. And so people make a lot of really significant life decisions from a mindset of like scarcity. Like, I have sacrificed a lot to get here, and now is my payday. And I think that's probably the wrong view to take. A lot of the research on happiness, it's more about finding time to put towards things that you like to do with people that you like to do them. And you can do that regardless of how much money you make. And in fact, the more people focus on money, the less happy they become. The more people focus on time and how they allocate their time and who they spend their time with, the more happy they become. And so as you're coming to the end of your college life, there's a lot of changes that are going to happen. And this was one thing that I struggled with when I graduated from college. Like, I was not prepared for the loneliness of being like a middle-aged man. It was hard for me to find friendships and to find, I had my family, and I love spending time with my family, but you need other relationships outside of that as well. And in college, very often it's easy to develop relationships because you're around so many different people that are all in the same kind of space in life very often. And finding ways that, like, outside of classes and outside of school, finding relationships that are meaningful that you can continue after you graduate, to find some of that community. I think that's important.
Oh, yeah, I really like that. I think this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately too, is that sometimes we get so fixated on the end goal that once it comes, it's hard to find, like you were talking about, purpose. You might find yourself in some kind of crisis where you're like, well, my identity, which is something we talk about a lot in communication, was tied up in the college experience and my schedule and making sure that I was going to events and all of those things, that when that stops, well, now what? So yeah, I really like that advice. And this might be something somewhat similar, but what is something that a college student should look for that would be really good to see on a resume? Like what are what are people looking for when they're hiring a newly graduated college student?
Yeah, this one's a tough one because, everybody looks for different things. I think that there are patterns, though. People a lot of times want to see some evidence that your past behavior, your past performance is going to be linked somehow to your future performance. So if you can show in like an internship or some kind of study abroad or something like that, that you've developed skills that are pertinent to the job that you're going to be doing, that's going to go a long way. Um, the truth is that a lot of people look very similar on paper. When you're coming out of college, everybody has, a 3.0 or a 3.5 GPA. Everybody has, a certain amount of like part-time work experience. And so you need to find something that's going to differentiate you so that when somebody is just looking through a stack of 50 applications, they stop and they're like, whoa, this person did that? That's pretty cool. So just finding it, I think it's hard to give just like a formula for like this is how you make yourself look great, because as soon as you do that, then everybody just follows the formula and then nobody stands out.
Yeah.
And so you have to find something like what is unique about you and about the things that you do, your strengths, um, the knowledge that you bring, the experience that you bring, and then highlight those things. Like there are some things you just have to check off the box where it's like, you know, do you have a decent GPA in your college program? But then there has to be something in addition to those things that really sets you apart as like, I have something that I can contribute here that you don't already have. And nobody else that you're looking at has that skill too. And so, it's finding that kind of niche skill that they weren't even looking for, but they're like, holy crap, I can't believe this person does this.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
I have a quick question for the seniors. Do you feel like grad school is worth it to like really take you over the edge, like when there's a lot of competition out there? Or do you feel like you could still be really successful without grad school? Because I'm, as a senior, and I know a lot of seniors are conflicted. Like, should I apply to grad school or should I just keep my undergrad and just start my career from there? Because I know you, and I don't know if you might be biased because you've got a PhD, and that takes a lot of work.
I think that it really depends on what you want to do. So a lot of people go into grad school because they don't know what to do. And they're like, well, I guess I'll just go into grad school so that I can delay making the decision for another 2 years. And I think that's probably the wrong attitude to have when going into grad school is like, well, I've spent 4 years not knowing what I want to do, and now I can just put in 2 more. Um, if you have a purpose for why you want to get a degree, like an MBA or a master's in communication, or like if it's going to get you somewhere, then do it. Um, I think there are some avenues, like if you want to become a therapist, yeah, you need a master's degree. Like you just have to. If you want to start a business, it depends. Like, is it going to benefit you to, get an MBA? Probably. Does it depend what MBA program you go into? Yeah, it sure does. There's a lot of predatory education out there that their goal is just to like chalk up another number and bring in a few $1,000 extra and they're going to convince you like, well, everybody should have a master's degree. And the truth is not everybody needs a master's degree, but some people do. And, if you want to, that can be one of those ways that you set yourself apart where you're like, yeah, I have a master's degree in whatever, and I'm applying for an HR position, and they want to see that you've put in that extra time and you have a greater level of understanding. So I think the answer is it depends, but have a purpose for getting a graduate degree not just a time filler while you're figuring out more like what you really want to do when you grow up.
Right. And then for our grad program here, the Master's Comm program, is it like a super competitive program to get into?
Um, it's not super competitive. There are some criteria. You need to have above a 3.0 GPA. And we reject a significant number of applicants just because they don't meet. We have a certain number of students that we can accept every semester, and I think that kind of shows the quality of our program. That
Yeah.
there are some programs out there that's like, hey, if you have $10,000, we'll give you a degree, and you'll pretend to learn, and we'll pretend to teach, and everybody wins because we get your money and you get a piece of paper. And I think that our program goes way beyond that. That it's about learning more and mastering a body of knowledge to a greater degree than just like getting a piece of paper so that you can walk out and like check a box that you have a master's degree.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Sorry, I've always wondered that. I'm like, is our program competitive? But it seems like it'd be a really good resource to apply if you want to, like, even because you can teach with that degree, right?
Yeah, so we have a lot of our adjunct professors and some of our senior lecturers, full-time lecturers in our department are graduates of our MPC program. A lot of the people around campus that work in HR and that work in different offices around the campus are graduates of our program. We have graduates all over the place. So there is a lot of benefit to it, but again, know why you're doing it, not just like to fill time.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you.
I had a question to go along with if like grad school is worth it or not. What would you say to students who don't know what they want to do with their major, like undergraduates? Do you think it's worth them still wanting to go to school and try to figure out what they want to do, or should they wait? What advice would you have for that?
I would say do some research. So there are some really, really good books out there that kind of walk you through the steps of figuring out what you want to do when you grow up. One is called Designing Your Life, and it's two Stanford professors that were engineers in their normal life and then went and taught these classes at Stanford about like figuring out as a designer, how do you figure out the life that you want to have? And they focus a lot on not just like building a career that you want, but identifying what life you want to lead, and then how does work fit in with that life so that you can be most fulfilled in general, not just fulfilled in your career. A lot of people get a lot of money and they're very successful in their career, but they're still miserable because they haven't really figured out how the rest of life works. And so they just put more and more and more time into what they're really good at, which is what their work is and what they get paid a lot of money to do. And so I think a book like that is really helpful to figure out like, oh, this is all a balance and it all fits in together. And if I want to be happy, then I better figure out how to do that. I think one of the problems that we have in the Department of Communication is that, when people are like, well, what can I do with a degree in communication? It's like, well, you can do anything. And that's, I think, more detrimental than it is helpful. Because if you can do anything, then that really tells you nothing. When I talk about organizational communication, I meet with students, I say, there's really kind of three pathways that you can go on with organizational communication. You can do kind of a general management, like I can be a department manager or a project manager. I can go into HR, or I can do entrepreneurship and start my own business. If any of those sound like something that you're interested in, then OrgComm might be a good option for you. But I would say go figure out what your end goal is. Go look online. We have more information out there available to us now than ever in the history of human beings. And so there's no shortage of available information about how much money a certain job makes, what the job entails. I like having students go and interview people that are in fields that they're interested in to get a taste of what it looks like what's the good, the bad, and the ugly that happens when you're a social media manager or an HR manager. And then like, is that something that really appeals to me? Very often we get exposed to career paths and we watch CSI and we're like, oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. And then it's like, oh, my life would be just sitting in a lab all day. That doesn't sound fun. Like I wouldn't get to like shoot my gun and hang on to the bottom part of a helicopter. Like, no, that's not what your job looks like, even though TV makes it look like that. So I'd say figure it, like do some research, put some time into your own path, and then like find the trajectory, the major or the degree that's going to get you to where you want to go, instead of doing it reverse, where you get a degree and then figure out what you can do with it.
And also just to touch on that, like we have so many professors and people at Weber State that are more than willing to like let us shadow them and do the research that way. Like go in and actually sit down with them and kind of plant, like look at what they do every day. Go out and like do that research that way, because having someone just right there is more than helpful, and it gives you just a new perspective of, instead of just getting paper research, you're actually getting out into the field and seeing what they're actually doing and what you would be doing in that career path as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of students are afraid that there'll be this major imposition on people. And I think you'd be surprised at how helpful people are if you just ask for it. A lot of people don't come into office hours or don't ask to meet with me when they need help with their advising, because I think that they're afraid that I'll be like, ugh, I can't believe you're making me meet with you.
Yeah.
And the truth is that most faculty, most staff around here really are dedicated to the success of students. And that's kind of the benefit of coming to a place like Weber State instead of a place like the University of Utah or these major research institutions where the faculty are kind of like, teaching in general, students in general are just a bother. And I'm here to do my research and that's it. But when you're at a place like Weber State, there's a reason why faculty come to places like this. It's because they're more interested in the students and teaching and developing young people rather than like just advancing their own career.
For sure.
That's great advice. I had a funny experience this week. I had an opportunity to interview an FBI investigator, and I was thinking going into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm wasting his time. This guy's so serious and all these things. But he was the nicest person ever, was more than happy to give me advice and direction on different options to go through. And it was just a lot of fun. So I think that's great. Go out to your professors right from the get-go. A lot of them have wonderful work experience that they can guide you on. And the other thing that came to mind was pay attention to the classes you really enjoy and the projects you enjoy, and even journal them. Write those things down, because early on I had a communication class that I loved to death but didn't think anything of it. I just thought, oh, it's an elective and I'm continuing on to my required classes. Well, now I've come back many years later to communication and I'm loving it and enjoying it. And it's like, well, wish I would have switched years ago, but now I know. So pay attention to those things. What you enjoy will be fun to do, and you'll probably be a lot better at it. Kind of here, wrapping things up, does the panel have anything else for Dr. Ault?
I do. This is more of a fun question. But like, if you were to ever go do college again and go through the experience that you went through, would you do anything differently? And if so, what would you do?
That's a good question. I've thought about this so many times. Like, would I study something different, or maybe go to a different school or something like that? And what I keep coming back to is that I'm actually really happy with where I am, and I love what I do. And I sometimes think like, well, I could make a whole lot more money studying like in the business school or, doing something else, going into industry or something. But I don't know if that would make me any happier. It would probably make me more money, but like my real passion, my interest, the things that I listen to and read have to do with what I teach. And if I was studying something else, I don't know if I would like it as much. And, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about where it's like, would I rather have more money or be happier in what I do? And I think probably, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have picked the money. But I think now, I don't know. Like I find that really caring about what I do and loving the topics that I teach is way more fulfilling for me than like making a few thousand more a year. So I think to answer the question, I don't know if I would risk doing anything different because I have it pretty dang good, and it would have to be something significantly better.
Yeah.
And I'd have to have a lot of assurances that it would
Yeah.
be better. So yeah, I don't think I would do anything different.
Okay. That's a good perspective to have, though. Like, you should be happy with where you've gone and what you've done. So thanks for answering that one.
Do you have anything you want to say to the Weber audience? Now's your platform.
I think that you made a good decision. I think Weber State provides a really high level of education, and the costs, not just like financial costs, but the way that Weber State really focuses on promoting students, I think is fairly unique. And being student focused, there are a lot of people here on campus that really are passionate about helping students. And you don't find that everywhere. So I think that sometimes, a few years ago, we had this slogan, "Just Weber," which I thought was a terrible thing to say. And I think it kind of accurately describes a lot of the way that people feel about Weber State, that it's like, well, I just went to Weber, and they kind of see it as like settling in some way, that they didn't go to the U or they didn't go to BYU or something like that. But I think the truth is that Weber has a lot of advantages over those other schools for students that make it like way more than just Weber,
Absolutely. The last two responses you had, I think, really paint the picture for what Weber State is and the passion that professors have. My experience over the last several years has only been positive with my professors, that they truly are passionate about their job and they wouldn't change anything. There's even been plenty of professors that have said I went out and tried this for a few years and I had to come back to it because I just love it so much. So I think if that's the number one thing that I would like to leave with our audience, is just that our professors really do care about our success. They're really passionate about their jobs and what they do. And so don't be afraid to approach them with any problems or concerns you have, because there's a lot of resources and opportunity here on campus. Is there anything else we want to cover before?
One thing that I would say, I know we've moved on past graduate school stuff, but if you are thinking about graduate school, I would definitely go talk to a professor about, like, how do I go about applying for graduate schools? Like, what kinds of advice? Because a lot of professors, we all have networks that are in academia. And I had a student that, graduated with an undergraduate here, went on to a master's program at one of the top programs in the country, went on to a PhD program, and like, he did it through networking. And that happens a lot. And so utilize the resource of the networks of of the faculty here. We have people that went to all different schools all over the country, really high level programs that they know the faculty that are there still and can put in a good word, and that doesn't hurt your chances when you're putting in an application and they're like, oh yeah, this was, my advisee's student from Weber State, and so I'm going to give a little extra attention to this application because this person came really highly recommended. So that can be a way of utilizing the resources that are available to us. A lot of times people just throw applications out all over the place without really thinking about it or like talking to people that might know people there. And so, that's what I would say is like use the networks that are available to you to leverage things. That's going to help a lot.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you for listening to the 3MC podcast. We're very grateful, Dr. Ault, for coming and joining us today.
Thank you for coming.
Serious wealth of knowledge and experience here. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to your professors and anyone else here at Weber State. Everyone is always happy to help and help you find direction. Please share this podcast with your friends and anyone else you think that it would help. And stay tuned for our next episode.
Hey guys, it's Claudia here. Thank you so much for tuning in to our 2-part podcast series. We would love to hear your feedback about today's episode. We have a link in the description that will take you to a quick survey. We would really appreciate it if you could take a quick second to fill it out or leave a quick comment below with your thoughts about today's episode. Also, if you enjoyed tuning in, feel free to give us a like and share the podcast with others that may benefit from the 3MC experience. Thank you.